Cheri is here, and I cannot wait to hear from you. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello, Astrid and everyone. Thank you so much for having me.
And the floor is yours, Cheri.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, everyone. I'm Cheri Arellano, and I founded a company called Divine Light Codes back in 2019. And I'm just so excited to be here and speak on this topic today, because I usually speak on the topic of starseeds or energy healing. And when Astrid invited me to exit the cycle, I was like, oh boy, do I have a few things to share about that. So thank you, Astrid, for putting together such a beautiful topic today, because the world needs more love and healing still. So, I call myself an energy healer, a starseed guide, and a soul mentor. And I help people awaken, heal to their sacred soul work path. That's kind of what I do most days. And I wanted to share with you guys a little bit about my story, my early origin stories, because, that's really where it all started. And if you know anything about starseeds, unfortunately, a lot of us have these crash landings onto planet Earth where we just come in and we're like, boom, thrown right into the craziness and the chaos and the dysfunction. And I've been doing hundreds of starseed readings, and I can tell you that most people who come from this, who consider themselves starseeds, they often have a dysfunctional family beginning, a dysfunctional, inner child or childhood home. And so myself included. So I'll share a little bit about my story, and then a little bit later we'll get into some tips and tools for how we can kind of start to recognize, how we can heal ourselves, what our triggers are, and how we can work on all of that stuff. So I was born on summer solstice in the summer of love, 1969. And I crash landed into Miami, Florida, into a very dysfunctional home. My father was an alcoholic, had been since he was 13, and he abused my mom for 13 years. They were married for 13 years. And so, I was in a home full of abuse, alcoholism, narcissism, and neglect. I created an acronym, AANN. because of all of that craziness that was there. And my parents were entrepreneurs. They had their own business. My mom worked for my dad. That's how she met him. She became his secretary. And they worked long hours. They were really hard workers. So they weren't home a lot of the time. But they were also really hard partiers. So they're coming out of the 60s. It was the early 70s. It's when, everything was like crazy. The summer of love. You guys know, many of you know what went on in those days, and they were part of it. I felt like I was mostly raised by my siblings in those days. I had 3 older siblings. They were all 10, 11, 12 years older than me. And so my sister basically raised me until I was 5. And then when she had enough at the age of 15, she ran away from home. So that was my first abandonment. I felt really abandoned by my sister leaving, because she was the person who was there for me every day, in this chaos. And eventually one of my brothers left, and then it was just me and my other brother. And it was crazy. My parents decided to finally get a divorce when I was 8 years old. And in the middle of that divorce, my father was murdered. So I lost my father at the age of 8. And then my mother remarried, and she remarried into another abusive relationship. But this time it was different. It wasn't physical abuse. It was mental and emotional abuse. So, 2 sides of the same coin, and a little bit less dramatic or traumatic, if you would. But still, not the healthiest environment. So fast forward, I didn't really know what self-love was until I was about 19. And somebody who was close to me in my life started to teach me about self-love. I didn't even know what that meant. I only knew about survival, right? And as a young adult, I started my career. I studied fashion photography in Miami, Florida. And with that came a lot of clubbing, nightlife, model parties, that kind of thing. I was a fashion photographer. And I love to go out dancing and, drinking. And I was just in it, like fully having the time of my life. It was a lot of fun. But after about 5 years of that, I realized like I need to shift or something bad is going to happen. I just had this intuition, like this deep inner knowing that like I need a shift or something's going to go wrong. It was just this intuitive hit. I always had these like strong intuitive hits that would come in out of nowhere. And it was like this inner voice. And I knew that I had to listen to it. And I didn't know why. I didn't understand it. We didn't talk about spirituality or intuition back then. So it wasn't a thing. Some of you were blessed to grow up in households where your parents were spiritual or intuitive, and they kind of taught you at an early age how to work with that energy. And unfortunately for me, that wasn't the case. So I had to kind of figure it all out on my own, which was beautiful in its own way as well. So fast forward, I ended up moving all the way to Oregon, from Miami, Florida to Oregon. Here I went from the fashion nightlife scene of Miami to the grunge scene of Oregon. It was 1994. Nirvana was all the rage. It was like a culture shock, actually. And it was a good thing, though. It was like a culture shock in a good way. So at this time, I started to really become independent. I finally got out of my home where I was kind of like the adult. I was taking care of my mom a lot. A lot of alcoholic children become like the adult in the household, if you will. And that was true for me as well, till I was about 25 years old and I left. So then I started on my journey, ended up moving to LA, ended up meeting my soulmate, now husband. And we went to India, Sri Lanka, and Nepal in 2001. And that was kind of like the beginning of my awakening and activation as a starseed. And we started a creative agency together in San Francisco, and we did that for 25 years. We served like eco-conscious companies and nonprofits. And in that business, I was still, running my energy. I heard Courtney talk about control, and, it really made me reminiscent of that time in my life when I had to like run my business in my divine masculine energy. I was way out of balance. I was doing everything with control. And, that's how most entrepreneurs, that's how most of us were taught to run businesses in the 2000s, right? It was all about goals, achievements, making more money, do, go, go, go. It was very driven energy, very divine masculine energy. And in that time, I started to realize that I was out of balance in that area, and my divine feminine was like nowhere to be found. And I was like, holy cow, like I need to work on this. How, like where do I start, kind of a thing. And I started on the outside, and I'll explain what that means in a moment. But in that time, I also went to Al-Anon for 4 years. Al-Anon is like AA, but it's for the family members of the alcoholics. And what we learn is that you can't control other people, places, and things. You can only control yourself. And boy, that was a really hard pill to swallow for me, because I had spent probably the better part of my teens and early 20s trying to fix my mom, trying to get my mom to stop drinking. And it wasn't working. It just flat out wasn't working. And I was so grateful for all the things that I learned in those rooms, because you really can't control other people, places, or things as much as you want to. We can only change ourselves. So I would say that that was kind of like a big activation for me to start really working on myself. And in 2012, that was like another awakening wave. A lot of light workers came online in 2012, myself included. And that was the year that I started learning mystery. I went to, all 3 levels of a mystery school. I learned a bunch of healing modalities. I learned how to meditate for long periods of time. I learned about ascension and what that meant for all of us, but for me, and I really went down the rabbit hole. Like, I really took it all in, and I took my healing very seriously because I knew that I was out of imbalance. And so when I mentioned earlier that I had to start with my divine feminine, like trying to bring her back in, I had to start on the outside. I had short hair, wore pants, black all the time, so I let my hair grow, started wearing dresses, tried to wear pink and rose and, all these feminine colors, because I was trying to like bring it in from the outside in. And it was a really good step. But as I learned more about the divine feminine, I realized that it was really about allowing and receiving and allowing things to flow more, and to use, divinity, use your synchronicities that the universe grants to us all the time. All day long, we get signs and clues from the universe. But are we paying attention, and are we catching them and seeing them? And so I started to learn to look for the clues and the signs, and to go with the flow, and to allow divine partnerships, relationships, projects, things like that. People who would come in and work on my team. I tried to really let it come in a flow and an intuitive way. And that was kind of the beginning of healing that imbalance for me. Now, as you can imagine, my childhood home was pretty chaotic. And so as an adult, a lot of those memories, feelings of being out of control create in us as adults feelings of wanting to be in control, right? So we get triggered all the time. And those triggers are opportunities from the universe to heal, right? I always see them as opportunities, like, oh, I still need to work on that. Okay, let's breathe into that. What can we learn? Where am I feeling disrespected or neglected or not heard and not see? I'm Gen X. How many Gen X are in the room? Our generation was taught to be seen and not heard. How many of you can relate to that phrase? Yep, we were told to go outside, don't come back until the lights came on, you had to kind of stand off in the corners of the room if your parents had guests over or whatever. They didn't want to hear from us very much. So that was a big thing that I had to unlearn, was how to be seen and heard, and how to feel safe being seen and heard, and that it was okay to be seen and heard. So I started to realize that a lot of my triggers were coming around not feeling respected, not feeling seen and heard, being out of control, all of those things that you can imagine. So I created some tips for us today to, if you want to write these down, or I can email them to you, later on, whatever works for you guys. But so when we get triggered, okay, I want you to do a little bit of self-inquiry and think about what triggers you. And when you do get triggered, you ask yourself, what past experience does this current feeling remind me of, right? When you can connect it back to an earlier experience or a wound or memory, it helps to connect that trigger. So now, you're getting triggered because maybe somebody didn't listen to you, or they didn't do what you asked them to do, or, whatever it is, you can go, oh, there's that trigger again. So it's really about, like, the step one is really identifying that trigger so that you can begin to work with it like clay, like putty, okay? And the second question you can ask yourself is like, is there a younger version of me that felt this way before? And what did they need to hear? And this encourages reparenting our inner child healing. So there's some part of your inner child perhaps that needs to still be healed, or wants to be seen and heard, or is the one like kind of making you feel that emotion when you are getting triggered. So how can we connect it to our inner child? And then thirdly, how can I reassure myself right now that I'm safe in this present moment? So a lot of our triggers are from the past, but in the logical mind, in the conscious mind, in a way it doesn't make sense because we're living in the now and our situation is totally different, right? So it brings you back to the now and it shifts you out of that fear or that emotional reactivity. So just to summarize, what past experience does this current feeling remind me of is the first question. The second question is there a younger version of me that felt this way before? And what do they need to hear right now to be soothed? And 3, how can I reassure myself that I'm safe and that I'm in the present moment and this isn't really happening right now? So those are 3 questions that we can use in the moment that are really fast, right? To help shift that energy and move you out of that response if this is still happening to you guys. And here are some practical exercises that we can use regularly every day after this happens. So if you get triggered and you're feeling angry, upset, sad, whatever the emotion is, it can dysregulate your body and you might start to feel fight or flight. You might just feel yucky. You might feel sad. You might be hard on yourself. We all process those emotions differently. And so I would encourage you to take 5 minutes a day to reconnect with your body and the earth, especially if you're feeling overwhelmed in that moment. So it could just be like, something just happened. You went through the 3 questions and now you're going to go sit in the bathroom, in your bedroom, in your cubicle, in the closet, anywhere you can get away from people, in your car. Your car's a great one. Just go sit for 5 minutes and breathe, okay? Just breathe it out, because what happens is our cells start to activate, right? And if any of you have noticed, you might notice that your body even feels differently. You can feel like your cells doing something that don't really feel good in the body. And so you need to move that energy out. Because remember, like, trauma lives in the DNA, it lives in the body, in the muscles. The muscles hold on to trauma. And some of it is even passed down from our ancestors, like our grandparents and great-grandparents. So when we heal the trauma, we're also healing it for future generations. So another step or tip that you can do is weekly journaling or writing a letter to your inner child. So you could sit down, if you guys have a journal, you can write, list, identify the trigger or the emotion that came up for you, and then follow it with a loving letter to yourself or your inner child. That's a great way to start to soothe that thing so that the triggers become less frequent and less until they, feel more healed and whole. Some other things we can do are simple breath work tools for triggers, like slow, deep belly breaths, inhaling for the count of 4. Hold it. Exhale for the count of 6. Like really breathing throughout the day. How many of us hold our breath all day? Start to notice if you ever hold your breath throughout the day. Most of us don't take deep breaths. We don't breathe fully. We don't use our whole lung capacity. We take these like shallow breaths all day long. And so if you can start to pay attention to your breath and ask yourself, am I really breathing deeply? When was the last time I did some belly breathing, you know? Sighing is another great way to release that feeling when we get triggered, right? So you could just like walk around and just release it with the sound of your voice, with an exhale. That works wonders for me. So try that if you're not doing it naturally already. And then fourth, you can always remove yourself from the trigger or the dysfunction if possible. You know, it's not always possible because it could be someone that lives in our home, or you may not have an opportunity to leave in that moment for whatever reason. But even if you can just go into a different room or go outside, you're still removing yourself temporarily to allow yourself to come back into center before it gets more blown out. And then the biggest one that we all could use more of is self-love practices, right? So what is it that you love to do for self-love? And I would even add this to your journal. So when you go back and you write that trigger or emotion and then the letter to your inner child, you could also write what you're going to do next for self-love. It could be getting a mani-pedi, doing a salt float, buy yourself some flowers, garden, travel, spa retreats, spiritual retreats, spend time in nature, you know, axe throwing, whatever you like, whatever makes you feel good and feels like self-love and self-care, something you've been putting off for a long time. Maybe it's even painting or doing art, you know, or picking up your guitar again that you haven't played in 5 years. Whatever it is, find some time to soothe that, because also often when we get triggered too easily, it means we're not honoring our inner child. We're not honoring that part of our soul that needs to be honored on a daily basis, which involves love, play, creativity, being silly, finding your joy, you know, dancing, singing, whatever the thing is. Like, we have to make time for that. Because when you're in love, you're not in fear, right? And when you're not in fear, you're probably not getting triggered. It's that simple, you guys. So I would love to take a couple minutes to do some breath work with you guys if you want. Just a quick little 2-minute meditation with a sound healing. And then afterwards I can talk with you about my offerings for today. And we only have 4 minutes left. So it's hard to like get through it all and talk fast, but not too fast, and, you know, honor everyone's time. So thank you for listening to my crazy story. And I hope you found some of those tips helpful. I intentionally turned off the chat so I wouldn't get distracted, but I definitely will go into the chat and read all of your comments, because those are like gold for me. So, okay. So if you guys are ready, please just take a moment to straighten your spine if you can, or lie down if you'd like to. And we're going to take some deep breaths in together, breathing in. So just close your eyes. Take a deep breath in for the count of 4. Here we go. And exhale. Another nice deep breath in, breathing all the way down to the belly. And exhale. Another nice deep breath in. exhale. And really feel your belly rise and fall as you breathe. Really bring your awareness and your attention into the heart space, into your chakras. Reconnecting to your core, your heart center, your love center. Reconnecting to your inner child, your love, your divinity, your playfulness, your joy. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and come back in fully into the body. Thank you for taking those couple of minutes with me to breathe. It feels really good to connect into our core, our essence like that. And I would encourage you to do that, 2, 3, 4 times a day if you can. Even if you're not being triggered, do it. It feels amazing. It's a really great way to ground your energy as well. So I wanted to share a little bit while I have 1 minute left, my offerings. I do energy healing sessions. I do starseed readings. I do DNA reprogramming where we work on the holographic DNA. And we work on limiting beliefs, ancestral patterns, and ancestral trauma that came in through the DNA line. And for today, I believe Astrid put the link in, but I'm also giving away some freebies. There's a free prayer for energy clearing. There's a free meditation and some digital downloads as well. So please go check out my link and sign up for a mailing list, and then you'll get all the freebies sent to you. I also created a special discount code for all of you guys and gals watching today, Astrid's beautiful group of light workers here. It's called Exit 74. And so write that down, or maybe you can put it in the chat, Exit 74, to save an extra $74 off of my Enlighten bundle, which includes 3 sessions at a greatly reduced price, and you get to use them over the course of 2 months. So please check that out as well. I would love to chat with any of you. If you have any questions about my services, please feel free to email me. So thank you so much for having me here today, Astrid.
Thank you, Cheri. It was amazing.
Oh,
Very
thank you.
inspiring story. Everybody who was born in 69, I guess, has a similar story.
Oh, really? Did they chime in and say that? I didn't see the chats yet, but I will.
Well, I'm one of them.
If you were born in the 60s, raise your hand.
Exactly.
Or comment in the chat. Oh
yes,
my
we're
goodness.
going to put your link inside of the chat. Yeah, here we go. See, 64, 66. Yeah, here you go. Right, guys?
Yeah, or even the early 70s. Even the kids born in the early 70s, I would say we all had that same, genetic blueprint code of coming in and like saving the planet for sure.
Yeah, totally. Yep, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was really a lot of fun to be here, and thank you. It looks like you had a great lineup of speakers today as well.
And it will continue.
Yay!
And the next one is already on.
All right, guys, have a beautiful weekend. See you next time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you as well. Bye-bye.
Bye.